Yes, the report does talk about the role of banks and puts particular emphasis on the ability of banks to jointly hold debt and equity. We have in our country a rather unusual situation where banks are essentially prohibited from holding equity in the companies that they lend money to. There's a separation of debt and equity for a variety of historical reasons. Then again, there were good reasons at the time, but they had unintended consequences. But we believe that the separation of debt and equity actually hurts investment. By allowing a bank to both hold debt and equity, the bank looks at its lending differently. It gets a piece of the upside. If the company does well in the long term, it's not so worried about coverage ratios and whether it's going to get paid back. And we believe that the joint holding of debt and equity should be allowed in the U.S. markets. We think that the reasons that was initially separated are past, and that we need to relook at that issue again.
Mr. Fisher, what reforms suggested in the report might cause you to alter the way you manage at Motorola?
That's a very good question, and I think it goes to the heart of the fundamental observation that what we're dealing with is a systemic issue. Therefore, if you look at the report, you will see a list of recommendations for the private sector, for the institutional investors, and for public policy. I would not jump on any one of those recommendations. What I would do as a corporation is look at the system that is described herein, the system especially of internal investment, but not excluding the external investment world, the macroeconomic world. And I would say, what is a better way for a company like mine to run itself for the long term, and look at the entire system, and then decide in our context what is the best set of changes to make. And it won't be the same for every corporation. As Michael pointed out, there are many corporations in this country that are very long-term oriented, that do a very good job of managing their internal investments right now. But all of us could do a better job.
Michael, what evaluation have you made of the co-determination in Germany as adding to the long-term view of corporation?
Well, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, Germany has a system where labor has a substantial representation on the supervisory board of the company, which is the kind of external board of directors. I believe 50% or nearly 50% in the case of a large company, and a slightly smaller percent in the case of a somewhat smaller company. We believe that the representation of the employees on the board through the supervisory board system is one way in which the German system better aligns the goals of the employees and management and owners. In the context of our U.S. system, we believe that move would perhaps be radical and perhaps a little bit impractical here, and so we advocate instead a greater employee ownership structure, greater incentives for employee ownership plans to make employees major owners. We advocate this relaxation on pension fund restrictions on employee ownership. And with those greater employee ownership rates, we would advocate employee representation on the board, and we have in our report in several places, but we would not go so far as to suggest that it is necessary in the context of the American system to have a strict limit on what percentage of the board should be constituted as employees.
How do you deal with the problem of free riders if a mutual fund, for example, is going to get involved in trying to help direct a company in which it has an investment? That's going to presumably have them add people and costs to do that, the benefits of which don't all accrue to the fund that takes that step.
Right. That's a very interesting question, and your point makes it very clear why so few of our institutional investors today actually invest very much in doing this. Today, we have a system where the stakes are very fragmented. And the reason for that is, again, these limits on ownership that I spoke of earlier, but also the perception of fiduciary responsibility, the need for diversification. There are explicit requirements for, prudent diversification, and that's interpreted in ways that the pension fund manager is going to be darn sure that he or she has a very diversified portfolio. We advocate allowing owners to own bigger stakes, reducing the rate of trading so that their transactions costs go down. We find that one of the major reasons why U.S. mutual funds and pension funds have a hard time beating the market is because of the transactions cost, because they're spending so much in commissions and in buying and selling the shares and influencing the price of the shares in the process. We believe if the mutual funds and pension funds had larger individual stakes and knew they were going to be there for longer, because of perhaps there was an equity investment incentive, which gave them a real incentive to be there for 5 years, that it would then be in their interest to invest more in monitoring. And we also advocate in the report as at least something to consider that there be kind of syndicates where one mutual fund might act as kind of the lead for a group of others and take that role in this company, whereas in another company, another mutual fund might kind of take the lead role in the monitoring and discussion process. And we also advocate in the report as at least something to consider that there be kind of syndicates where one mutual fund might act as kind of the lead for a group of others and take that role in this company, whereas in another company, another mutual fund might kind of take the lead role in the monitoring and discussion process. But the problem now is that unless we create a different system, nobody as an investor has much incentive to be very well informed about the company, to play much of a role in the company, to influence management. And so basically, if you're unhappy, you sell, and if things get really, really bad, there's a takeover, but that's not the best system.